Welcome back to Insight. We are talking about the Prime Minister's foreign trips in the year gone by and how they have contributed to cementing India's relations with countries across the world. And right now in the program we are joined by Professor Makhan Lal, Senior Fellow of Vivekanand International Foundation. Okay, we'll be going to him via phone line in just a bit. But Mr. Chari, continuing our discussion, we were talking about the perception about India that seems to have changed abroad and how the NRIs are no longer reluctant to come to India, and the same goes for foreign investors as well. What do you have to say about that?
Certainly, I think what was necessary is one thing we should remember. Our foreign policy for a very long time, right from the inception of foreign policy issues by the first Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, we conducted foreign policy with a kid glove, with a very seclusion to any other policy. But over a period of time, there was a need for recalibration of the foreign policy from time to time. After the end of the Cold War, there was a need for us to recalibrate foreign policy because there was a huge engagement with of many countries on a different scale. What happened was the Western world started dealing on an economic keel with many countries, especially with Japan, with China and with Southeast Asia. China did very aggressive business in Southeast Asia, China did very aggressive business in Africa, Japan did very aggressive business with Western world. The Western world also got segmented, like for example the European Union, which is basically an economic concept. So the whole world was changing from the 90s into a economic concept. Now during the same time, from say 93 onwards, another very important aspect was happening. The economic growth engines of the world was slowly shifting from the west to east. When countries like Malaysia, Singapore emerged, they used to be called Asian tigers. So they emerged as a investment market. That was another area or another time when we could have recalibrated our foreign policy, which we probably did not do in a sufficient manner. We did do it, but not to the satisfaction of the foreign policy practice. Okay. Now what has happened is, India and China have emerged as an investment destination, as growth destination for the whole world. So this was the time when, contrary to popular belief in the past, there was a need. And we cannot have the luxury of divorcing foreign policy with economic policy anymore. So trade, industry, international trade, international commerce, economics and foreign policy have to go together, have to be correlated as far as possible. If you want to achieve the maximum and optimum utility of both these policies. That is exactly what Prime Minister Narendra Modi has attempted and is attempting in these years. So his engagement with foreign governments are not only for reaching out to the diaspora and NRI, not only for foreign policy corrections, not only for engaging and marketing India in that particular manner, but also some sort of a correlation between the economic output that we require and also the investment that we need from these countries.
Absolutely.
So that is why on the one hand you have an aggressive foreign policy engagement with these countries, and on the other hand you have got a very strong Make in India program.
Absolutely.
So if these two things are able to be correlated in the years to come, our foreign policy and economic policy will both be going at the same pace and progressing towards the achievement of our aims.
Right, we'll take that point further to Professor Makhan Lal. He's joined us now on phone, Senior Fellow of Vivekanand International Foundation. Welcome to the program, Professor Makhan Lal. We are talking about the year gone by and looking at the Prime Minister's many foreign trips and how they have contributed to our relations with the countries across the world. How do you view the many foreign trips that the Prime Minister has gone to in the year gone by?
Thank you very much for calling me. Let me begin with one point which has been made quite a lot. That is constantly Prime Minister being on foreign visits. I would like to emphasize and would like to state very clearly that Mr. Modi has not been going to foreign visits more often than normally other prime ministers have gone. If you look at the statistics of UPA first, UPA 2, first year's foreign visits by other prime ministers, Manmohan Singh, it's almost the same. One or two are different. One or two countries visited more by Mr. Modi. So it is very unfair. Sometime when it is said that Prime Minister is more abroad than in India. It's very unkind comment, because those who make the comment, they seem not to know how it has happened in the past. So the first thing I would like to make very clear that Mr. Modi has not been abroad as much as it has been made out. Let us accept that it is job of Prime Minister to go abroad, to make the country's image better, to get the better relationships, and that has been done time and again. Number two, foreign visits have two very distinct roles, as a previous speaker just before me said. First is diplomatic relationship, countries' relationship, and second is the what you call business. Over the period for last 30 years that we are hearing a word which is becoming very common, globalization. Word is becoming a village. Whole thing is globalization is nothing. It's but business going all around. So business has to take the front seat when you are dealing with foreign policy, when you are dealing with foreign countries, because much more now business is the trade, and most of the embassies, most of the people, they are there just to enhance the trade business with each country, other country. So on both these fronts, Modi has succeeded phenomenally. Absolute phenomenal success in the sense, recently I have been abroad. I've been traveling abroad for the last 34 years. But believe me, I have never felt so proud, and I have never been treated. I have been to very same countries earlier also. But treatment of my colleagues, treatment of my other people were very different than this time. Number one, and people are talking with a lot of respect now. That was not available 10 years back, 7 years back, 6 years back. These are certain things we must learn to appreciate, number one. Number two, we must also realize things cannot be achieved in 1 day or 1 year. Even at a family level, even at a small local level or house level, if the things have gone bad for 10 years, body has gone into coma, we can't expect that it will start running very next day, some other doctor takes over. It will take time. It will, but there is no doubt that things are on the right path. Things are with proper speed. It will take time. We are going to be better off than we have been in the past. That's my distinct feeling, and I'm quite sure about that.
Professor Makhanlal, one last question on the choice of countries that the Prime Minister has visited, starting with Bhutan, which was the first country he visited since taking over as Prime Minister, to now Mongolia, a country that has becoming the first Indian Prime Minister to ever go there.
Yes. You see, this shows a vision that my eyes are not just very far distant. They are close, next neighbor also. This also shows that I am not looking just at my nose, but also I am looking at the horizon. The kind of countries, the number of countries Modi has visited, it shows not only his pan-India vision, India's reputation around the world, but also India's relationship with next door neighbor. Because after all, you have to live in the world, with the world, and also with your neighbors. And look at the way Modi first visited Bhutan. Try to remember when the last Prime Minister, who was the last Prime Minister who visited Bhutan? You yourself said that this is the first time a Prime Minister of India went to Mongolia. These are the kind of things that has to be appreciated, that he is reaching out to the people, to the country, to whom we have not bothered so far, or we did not care. It's a very good sign.
All right. Many thanks, Professor Makhanlal, for joining us. Vijay, you wanted to come in?
You know, there is something very interesting. If you see the trend, earlier the UPA government days, we were very passive players in the international relations. Whatever was happening in the world, we were either observers, or if it is happening about us or against us, we were just reacting. So it's after a very, very long time that we have a prime minister, and I would say I am one of those people who admired Indira Gandhi's foreign policy, the way she handled the resistance from across the world, and she was one of those prime ministers who took the world by its horn. But after that, after a very long time, we are seeing a government which is proactive now on international relations. Just now we discussed Mongolia, South Korea. A prime minister going to Nepal after so many years, I've forgotten the count. No prime minister would go there. We decided to go to Bhutan first, telling the world that we care about our neighborhood, and telling Bhutan that you are important for us. This is not something small. And then at the same time, when he goes to Mongolia, let us remember, he is going to Mongolia immediately after Beijing, and it has its political significance because Mongolia is another victim state of China. When he goes to Japan, Japan is one which is suffering from Chinese dadagiri, if you can use that word. He is going to all these countries. So this shows that now there is a vision behind it.
Okay.
It's not happening, without any reason. There is a design to everything.
There's also a message.
There is a message. He's telling China, we want to be friend with you, but at the same time, he is going to Mongolia, which I'm sure China didn't like much. Then he goes to South Korea, again the same thing. He makes friends with Japan, with Australia, with America. He goes to all those countries in Indian Ocean, from where China has been trying to encircle us. And this is not something small. This shows that here is a government, here is a prime minister who has vision about tomorrow's India, who is not going to let things happen on their own, who is not going to allow India to be just a target or a victim or a recipient of the developed changes across the world. Here is a person who wants to change things according to Indian interest. So this, I think, is a qualitative change, which I'm sure even opposition parties should welcome, because ultimately on foreign policy there is no disagreement. There may be disagreement on on individuals, or somebody may be feeling jealous of that Mr. Modi becomes very prominent and my leaders could not become. That's a very small element. But otherwise, he is a common if I can use the word, property of every party, of the whole nation, and we should feel happy about it.
Mr. Chari, would you like to add something to that before we slip into a break?
Yeah, it's very important. In fact, you raise the issue of engaging with these countries. Our relationship with some of these countries, especially the so-called big powers, the economic powers and the political powers in the country, like the US, the German Republic, Democratic Republic, China also. It had to be a very calibrated and calculated approach towards these countries. Our relations with China is one of competition, conflict and cooperation all at the same time. We have a conflict, we have an unresolved border dispute, but at the same time we have to cooperate with China on a number of issues like climate change. We are on the same page as far as climate change issue is concerned. And at the same time, when it comes to our engagement with Africa and Southeast Asia and Indian Ocean region comes, we are competitors. So we have to balance these three issues together. We cannot be having a situation with China whereas we have always conflicts and unresolved conflicts, and as long as the conflicts are not resolved, we cannot do without doing business with China also. We need a huge investment from China, and that is exactly what we are aiming at. And it was very rightly pointed out by Mr. Vijayakranti also. We have at the same time, in spite of all these issues being on the carpet, we have not allowed China to get away with what they have done on two issues. Number one is their engagement with POK. Chinese investments in POK. A day before the Prime Minister left for China, we called the ambassador and told them of
we lodged our protest.
We lodged our protest and said that these things cannot be taken for granted. Number one. Number two, as far as the staple visa issue was concerned, we told them that all the visitors from Tibet will be given staple visas. We could probably treat them in the same coin. So these things are all reciprocatory.
Absolutely.
So friendship as well as conflict becomes a reciprocatory issue in foreign policy, and that we have been able to engage with these two countries in a very good manner.
Well, with that we slip into yet another break in the program. Stay with us. We'll be back with the final segment of the show. Welcome back to Insight. We are talking about the Prime Minister's visits abroad in the last 1 year and his reception on the world stage. We'll continue the discussion with Professor Gopal Arora. Professor Arora, your co-panelists have pointed out earlier in the program, and you also mentioned it, how the Prime Minister has been able to weave our economic interests with our foreign policy, how these visits are also about investments and not just other aspects of our bilateral relations. What would you say about that?
Well, you see, the Prime Minister has started this Make in India campaign, and investment is a vital input, which he is looking at. But we have to understand that investment is a purely economic decision, be it diaspora or even other countries. They have to see that, they can have good returns out of their investments, their investment is safe. I think Prime Minister has been able to give that sense of comfort, to the people, and also he has been able to emotionally, make an emotional appeal to the diaspora. We feel that this should give us good results, even though I qualify that investment is purely, an economic, decision. So we should not simply say that just because they are diaspora, so they will invest money here. That's not. It has to be coupled with good policy framework here. So it is in this way that we can really build up on what has already been done in the first year.
Also, a quick word on the various schemes that the government has announced for the diaspora. There's been a merger of NRI and PIO cards. We understand there's also talk of granting lifetime visas to Indian Americans, and we're also talking about granting voting rights to NRIs, though this is something that's been talked about for many years now.
Yes, of course, these initiatives that he has talked about, they will have to pass through some constitutional hurdles also regarding voting rights to NRIs. And about this merging of PIO and OCI cards, that is a good step, and I think there was no need actually to make different kind of facilities for these two segments. Regarding this e-visa facility, I think that's a good initiative, and this will encourage people to visit, because these days there are competing destinations. So if you want to come, you first see where it is more convenient for me to plan my visit. So these are issues which will help in boosting our tourism also, which I personally feel has been one neglected area in our economy. Having a foreign tourist arrival of just about 7.4 million in this big country with these kind of tourist attractions is in fact not really exploiting our potential in tourism. Look at France, which has more than 13-14 times of foreign tourist arrival. So I think that is also one area which should be brought into focus.
Okay,
There's a lot
so
of potential in that.
Right. So, Mr. Vijay Kranti, it's not just Make in India or investment or reaching out to the CEOs and so on, but also an eye on tapping the tourism potential that we have by
Yes.
granting of e-visas, for instance.
Yes. This is something very interesting. He raised the right issue, Mr. Gopal raised this issue. India has so much to offer. India is one of, I think, perhaps the only country in the world where at any given day of the year, you can see snow, you can see desert, you can go to a beach, you can see rain, anything, it is available there. And still, we are not in a position to exploit all these things through inviting tourists from across the world. But I personally believe tourists is another field which comes with perception. The tourism develops with perception.
Absolutely.
And now, because the perception about India is changing, you will see even if Indian government does whatever efforts it makes, I can imagine that India is going to attract far more proportion of tourists, as compared to if you see it in proportion wise, because perception of India is changing because of Mr. Modi's new approach, and that is automatically going to help us. But we shouldn't settle only on that. Now it is time when Indian government should make special efforts to attract tourists, because tourism is one of the greatest, not only earners of an earner of foreign currency, but it generates enormous employment. Plus, it gives a new self-confidence to your people.
Right.
It makes them more self-reliant. It makes them more self-respecting.
Absolutely.
That is exactly what India needs right now.
Okay.
So we should focus on that.
Okay, Mr. Chari, it's not just the diaspora that has received our Prime Minister enthusiastically. It's also, he's had some very remarkable welcomes from all the world leaders wherever he has gone, be it Barack Obama, he's accompanied him to the Martin Luther King Memorial, or be it François Hollande in France, or Shinzo Abe, or you name it. It seems that he has struck a personal rapport with all the world leaders. What would you say to that?
Certainly. When Mr. Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister, the general refrain in the world leadership was that here is a man whom we really don't know well. So there was an apprehension about his background. And added to that was a very wrong perception by the US, for which they paid a very heavy price, of course. So coupled with all these things also was a level of uneasiness in dealing with a person whom they really do not know very well. So I think one very astute manner in which the Prime Minister put the world leaders at a great comfort is really remarkable, in the sense he did not carry any of the baggage either of his own treatment or of the past government. So if you remember, the first thing that he did after taking over as Prime Minister was go and meet Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister. Again, he met all the world leaders, he wrote to all of them, he acknowledged all their greetings, and then he set the ball rolling in a way. He gave them enough comfort, but at the same time he stood very firm on as far as the India's foreign policy perspectives are concerned. We did not negotiate on any issue with anybody. We were very strict as far as our own principles and engagements were concerned, but at the same time we put the foreign leaders on a very comfort pedestal. And coupled with that was this issue of giving them a little bit of a peep into a new India that was emerging.
Right.
So with all these things combined, it was a very good script that was written right from day one.
Right.
So it was very easy for the world leaders to connect with an Indian leader whom they thought they do not know. So it becomes very easy, and that is the reason why the world leaders are now approaching the Indian engagement, Indian economic engagement, Indian tourism engagement, or whatever it is, through this viewpoint. So actually the Prime Minister has become some sort of a CEO for the country, which was expected or not expected. It can be debated. Whether the Prime Minister should be working like a CEO or not is different. As you very rightly pointed out in the beginning, every Prime Minister is different. So we cannot be comparing the Prime Ministers. Every situation is different. So we cannot be comparing the situations on the last 60 years. From non-aligned movement, we have moved down to some multipolar world. So these are all different aspects of world economy, world politics, world engagements that have happened. So in such a situation, for a person who was a chief minister of a state and then he is catapulted into a prime minister's post, and for a person to engage with this kind of a world leadership and that too with the kind of finesse and ease,
taking selfies with them, for instance,
something absolutely remarkable.
Right. I have 10 seconds left. Very quickly, sir.
Yeah. You know, you see the change, especially in Australia and Canada. These were two countries which were not very kind to India vis-a-vis on nuclear issues. And when Mr. Modi goes there, it was really a surprise that both countries, we find them almost competing with each other to make India happy, to have a nuclear relationship with India. I think that is where the success lies. And it happens not because of any big change, because of a leader and his approach.
And his own style. All right, with that, it's time for me to wrap up this discussion here on Insight. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming to the studios. It was a pleasure having you here. And we'd also like to thank Professor Gopal Arora. With that, it's time for me to take your leave. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.